5 olive oil brands to avoid, and 5 that are actually real. Olive oil has a branding problem. Walk down any supermarket aisle and you'll see dozens of bottles labeled extra virgin cold pressed or 100% Italian, all promising the same golden, peppery, heart-healthy elixir that chefs and nutritionists rave about. But olive oil is also one of the most frequently investigated food categories in the world, and for good reason. It's expensive to produce correctly, easy to dilute or mislabel, and nearly impossible for the average shopper to verify just by looking at the bottle. That's created a strange paradox. On one hand, viral headlines and documentaries have convinced many consumers that most olive oil is fake. On the other hand, the most comprehensive independent testing conducted in recent years tells a more reassuring story about the major brands lining supermarket shelves. The truth sits somewhere in between, and understanding it requires looking at both the economics of olive oil fraud and the actual data behind specific brands. Why olive oil fraud happens. In the first place, the incentive for cutting corners is built into the price gap. Genuine extra virgin olive oil, EVO, requires olives that are harvested at precisely the right ripeness, pressed within hours to prevent oxidation, and stored under controlled temperature and light conditions. That process is labor-intensive and expensive. A liter of properly made EVO can cost several times more to produce than a liter of refined seed oil or lower-grade pomace olive oil. Because the visual and even flavor differences can be subtle to an untrained palate, some producers have historically mixed cheaper oils into their EVO, mislabeled the geographic origin of the olives, or sold oil that technically fails to meet the chemical thresholds for extra virgin, while still slapping that label on the bottle. Italian authorities have reported seizing hundreds of tons of illegally labeled olive oil products in recent years, and European fraud alert networks have flagged a rising number of cross-border notifications tied to mislabeling and origin fraud, a trend that accelerated after poor harvests in 2023 and 2024 pushed prices sharply higher across the Mediterranean. That context matters, because it explains why a void and trust lists exist at all, and why they need to be handled carefully rather than treated as gospel. A necessary caveat before the lists. It's worth being upfront about something. The most rigorous recent research on this topic complicates the popular narrative that name-brand olive oil sold in North America is routinely fake. A large-scale 2024 testing program organized by the North American Olive Oil Association, designed and overseen by a Yale University biostatistician, and carried out using International Olive Council-recognized labs, tested 190 samples covering the top 15 best-selling brands, representing roughly 85% of the U.S. and Canadian market, plus dozens of private label store brands. The result: no economic adulteration was found in any of the major brands tested. The only adulterated samples in that study came from ultra-cheap, low-recognition brands selling at prices dramatically below the market average. That finding lines up with earlier academic work, too. A UC Davis Olive Center analysis from 2010 to 2011 and a peer-reviewed 2015 study by FDA scientists both concluded that the risk of deliberate economic adulteration in U.S. supermarket EVO was low, even though some products failed to meet the full chemical or sensory bar for extra virgin grading. So the brands below aren't necessarily being caught mixing in canola oil behind closed doors. What they share is a documented history of quality standard failures, labeling controversies or lawsuits, and, in the case of ultra-discount oils, price points that make authentic production essentially impossible. Treat this as a guide to skepticism and label reading, not a verdict of fraud against specific companies. 5 olive oil situations to approach with caution. 1. Ultra-cheap, extra virgin oil priced far below market average. This is the single strongest predictor of a problem. In the 2024 NOA-backed testing program, every adulterated sample identified was priced more than 50% below the average retail cost of genuine EVO. If a liter bottle labeled extra virgin costs a fraction of what comparable products cost, the economics simply don't support authenticity. Someone along the supply chain is cutting a corner somewhere. 2. Bertali, based on older UC Davis test results. In UC Davis Olive Center testing conducted around 2010 to 2011, some Bertali bottles failed to meet the full sensory and chemical standards required for the extra virgin designation. That doesn't mean the oil was cut with seed oil. The failures were about quality grading, not proof of deliberate blending fraud. But it's the kind of result that has kept the brand on watch lists compiled by olive oil writers and researchers ever since. 3. Carapelli, for similar historical reasons. Carapelli showed up in the same era of testing with comparable quality grade shortfalls. Again, failing an EVO grading test is different from being caught blending in cheaper oils, but repeated appearances in independent lab results are worth knowing about if you're choosing between bottles on a shelf. 4. Filippo Berio, due to past litigation over labeling. Filippo Berio has faced consumer lawsuits in the U.S. over claims related to how its extra virgin designation and origin labeling were marketed. Those cases didn't establish a pattern of routine seed oil adulteration, and litigation outcomes in this space are often settled or dismissed without a definitive fraud finding. But the recurring legal scrutiny is a reasonable factor for a cautious buyer to weigh. 5. Unbranded or mystery blend bulk oils, especially imported through unclear supply chains. This is less about a single brand and more about a category. Oils sold in unlabeled tins at specialty markets or through online marketplaces with vague or missing origin information. The EU's fraudulent network has reported a rising number of notifications tied to unlabeled or mislabeled origin claims, including cases of oil from Syria or Turkey being repackaged and sold as Italian. And these products are far harder to trace back to a testing program than a major national brand. The common thread across all 5: price that seems too good to be true, historical grading failures, or a paper trail that's hard to verify. None of this means every bottle of Bertolli or Carapelli currently on shelves is compromised. Quality control and sourcing practices can and do change over time. But if you're choosing between options, these are the names and situations that warrant a second look at the label. 5 brands that test clean and are worth trusting. 1. Kirkland's Signature Organic Extra Virgin Olive Oil, Costco. This private label oil was explicitly cleared in the NOA's 2024 testing program, and it consistently ranks well in independent olive oil competitions for its chemistry and freshness. It's also one of the better value options among verified brands, since Costco's private label pricing tends to undercut boutique competitors while still meeting authentic EVO standards. 2. California Olive Ranch. As a domestic, vertically integrated producer, California Olive Ranch controls its supply chain from grove to bottle rather than rely on a patchwork of imported bulk oil. Its products are non-GMO verified cold pressed and have been highlighted repeatedly in third-party testing as meeting genuine EVO standards, making it one of the most consistently recommended American brands. 3. Colavita Extra Virgin Olive Oil. Colavita has been verified to the North American Olive Oil Association's testing programs and has a long operating history in both the U.S. and Italian markets. Its widespread availability at a moderate price point, combined with a clean testing record, makes it a reliable middle ground choice for everyday cooking. 4. Lucani Italia. Lucani sources from estate-grown olives and emphasizes pressing within hours of harvest, practices that directly address the oxidation and freshness issues that degrade oil quality over time. The brand has built its reputation around traceability, and it regularly appears on trusted brand lists compiled by food writers who track olive oil testing data. 5. Any oil carrying a genuine DOP/PDO certification, or the NOA seal, rather than a single brand. This is a certification worth actively looking for. A protected designation of origin, DOP/PDO. Label means the oil must be produced, processed, and bottled within a specific, legally defined region according to documented standards. It isn't a guarantee of exceptional taste, but it does exclude the worst blending and mislabeling practices. Similarly, the NOA seal on North American products indicates the brand has participated in the association's testing and verification program. Looking for these marks is one of the most reliable shortcuts available to an average shopper standing in a supermarket aisle. Practical tips for spotting the real thing. A few habits go a long way regardless of which brand you're considering. Check the harvest date, not just a Best By date. Olive oil degrades over time, and a harvest date within the last 12 to 18 months is a good sign of freshness. Producers proud of their oil's freshness will print it clearly. Look for dark glass or tins, not clear plastic bottles. Light exposure accelerates the breakdown of the beneficial compounds that define high-quality EVO. Be suspicious of blank origin claims like product of Italy with no estate or region named. Genuine DOP oils will specify a region. Vague, packaged in Italy language can sometimes mean the olives were merely bottled there after being sourced from elsewhere. Compare price to the category average before buying. If a bottle is dramatically cheaper than comparable EVO, treat that as the single biggest red flag discussed in this article. Store your oil away from heat and light once open, and try to use it within a few months, since even genuine EVO loses its beneficial polyphenol as it ages after opening. The bottom line: the 80% of olive oil is fake narrative that circulates online oversimplifies a more nuanced reality. The most rigorous independent testing available today suggests that major, widely distributed brands in North America are largely meeting authenticity standards, while the real risk is concentrated in ultra-discount, unbranded, or opaquely sourced products, particularly as climate-driven harvest shortages in the Mediterranean keep pushing prices upward and tempting fraud further down the supply chain. Rather than treating any single avoid list as definitive, the smartest approach is to buy from brands with a verifiable testing history. Check for DOP or NAOA certification, read the harvest date, and stay skeptical of any extra virgin bottle priced too far below what authentic production actually costs.